I was in Cape A, and I went to one of your group readings, and I remember sitting through 3/4 of the entire session, and I was there with my friend Lisa, and I'm like, I guess I'm not getting a message. And I was trying to feel like really strongly my mother. All of a sudden, you walked over to me, and I'm not kidding. You're like, I don't think I ever told you. And you proceeded to give me a message. It was the message that I had been looking for. But what was so interesting, Scott, was that you literally had her kind of cadence and that she has a soft, measured voice. Literally, that's how you delivered it. It was what I needed to hear, but it was like, I don't think I've mentioned to you, I don't think I've said to you how much I appreciate the person that you are. And it was one of those like pow. You also said something about you sell yourself short. That was a phrase that she had said to me in life so many times. It was incredible. And, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And in her voice.
I really believe she visited him.
He just wants you to know he knows how much you loved him.
And everybody in the room, their jaw just
knowing
dropped.
exactly what someone needs to hear.
That she called
you
me,
don't mind
but
if I
nobody
take my
really.
shoes off? It was incredible.
And then I was like, oh my God.
There's more after this life. This is Ripple Road.
Here we are. Welcome to episode 3. If you've made it this far, I guess you're not too bored of me. Look at that. That's my insecurity. See, I had to come up with an idea for a podcast where I can talk about everything I learned and how I became a psychic medium. And I thought, well, what better way to kind of use it as a little backbone to just talk about my, history, how I came to this place, and I could jump off from there. Problem with that is, if we're going to talk about my history, we got to talk about the dark times, the things that, I don't really like talking about too much. Makes me a little uncomfortable.
Because you actually gave up control so she could kind of almost speak directly. And I could see your distress. You were doing this as a favor to me, and it's funny because I had once thought I wanted one thing, and then this other thing came out, and it came from a place in my heart that what I really wanted was my mother. I lost her young. I have a feeling that was coming full circle, that, the universe was answering, and you were being a sweetheart and trying to do this kind thing for me, but it was very, very difficult for you. You were giving up too much of yourself to allow this other spirit to really come in. And after she died, though, and I realized that last final 10 days that she had a massive brain tumor, and suddenly it explained so much. I could tell because I was reading your body. Like, I could see the anguish. It was hard, and it was not easy for her either, because the comment came out that, gosh, I feel so slow and heavy. I mean, at the time she was ill, and I was living through it, and she did make my life very difficult with some of her actions and non-actions and decisions. You gave me a message from her that just like she was sorry that she'd made things hard for me.
And in the last episode, we talked about the Paulsboro house and how that was kind of a haunted, creepy place to live. But needless to say, on top of that, where the troubles really began for me, the troubles, I like saying it that way, kind of makes sense. It's like in Northern Ireland, with the IRA, the years where the troubles began, the troubles.
I was so terrified as a 14-year-old I couldn't go to sleep at night because I was seeing people and people were talking to me and I can't wake up, and I was horrified. I was afraid if I told someone they'd lock me up and throw away the key. Yeah, so I just finally, just to control my own fear, I just said, that's it, I'm done with it unless I need it. That's the other part of the grief with that with my mother, was because I dreamt very, very clearly about 3 weeks before she died that she was about to die. And I had to go down and take care of her, which is exactly what was going on in my dream. She's trying to cheer me up because I just have tears streaming. It's 4 a.m. I'm cleaning up, changing the bedding, and I'm just crying. I can't speak. And she kept at me and kept like, what's wrong? And the next day she kept at me, what's wrong? And I finally told her, I said, I dreamt you died. And she made her will that week and was gone in a few. And I took blame for it. I felt like if she had hope, she wasn't going.
I turned 13 in June, and it was only maybe, I don't know, a couple of weeks after that my grandmother passed away. She had told me about the heart pills, the little prescription bottle that was always in her purse, and that if I ever saw her having trouble breathing or was grabbing at her chest, to go get those pills and grab those pills. And nobody knew about that, That's weird looking back on it. But anyway, I remember them taking her to the hospital, and then after that was the last time I saw her. I remember being 4 and 5 years old, and I would sit down on the floor in front of her. She'd be on the couch, and we'd watch TV together, and she would scratch my head and her fingernails. And, it was just a nice, hey, look, a grandparent can spoil a grandkid, right? They say that, you bond with people when you're an infant based on, like a loving touch, a physical touch. So that's really the only person that I feel like I kind of had an emotional connection to. So when she passed away, I was kind of felt like I was left alone, like I was just, nobody really connected with me. I didn't have anybody that was very emotionally present, like our family didn't talk about emotions. So I kind of spent most of that time alone in my bedroom.
I had never been to see you, and so when I sat down, we were right in the front row, and I said, he's going to come right over to me. I just know it. And you did. You came over, you stood in front of me, and you started talking to somebody behind me, but you were saying Bobby, and somebody in Bobby in spirit, and I'm like, oh, this has got to be Rob. I didn't really say anything, but you said all these things about, I'm like, oh, he likes your hair shorter, and it was funny because they were like funny things, because Rob would always say, don't cut your hair, and you said, oh, he likes it shorter. Like the way he said it was like, wow, that's really funny, because it was weird. And the way he died, in a car crash with the things that they were carrying actually went into him and killed him instantly. Always like that. It took me a while to get over that part, but anyway, but that you said that, and you said certain things like he was sorry for doing this or that. It was like, oh my God, it's definitely Rob.
I just was set adrift. After school, I would just stay in my room. It was probably the depression. It was probably all those hours spent alone. But we grew up in that haunted house there. It's kind of spooky, and a lot of people have stories about seeing ghosts in there and feeling presences. So I would just have these terrible nightmares. So the nightmares for me began pretty quickly after my grandmother passed. The thing is about this, it's hard to put it into terms. You could call it night terrors, I guess. It seems to be a little more severe than your average nightmare. Like, okay, here's how it would go, right? So let's say you're having this crazy dream where you're in this house and it hasn't been inhabited, and you're like going in there to explore it, and you can feel like the kind of dankness in the air, like this stuffy, closed up, it hasn't been lived in for years. And you're going down the hallway and you're looking through these doors, and down at the end of the hallway, there's one door that's closed. And there's something down there. There's something down there. You can feel it, So it's like, all right, I gotta find my way out of here. But is it that door or is it not that door? And you're getting closer and you're getting closer, and you can feel your heart rate going, and it's like getting really intense. And then by the time you get there and you open that door, it's like, holy shit, there's this creature, it's this face, it's coming right at you, it's trying to get in your body, and you wake up, And now usually when somebody wakes up from a nightmare like that, it's pretty quick for you to kind of like breathe, wiggle your toes, look around the bedroom, feel the blankets against your skin, and be like, okay, hold on. That was a crazy dream. But the thing that would happen to me is I would wake up from that dream and I would see this black shadowy figure hanging off to my left-hand side, like in the dream, there was this thing that was coming to get me. It was going to get inside of me. It was going to try and like take over my body. And then I wake up and it's right there, and I can see this form like shifting, moving slowly away from me as I'm watching it dissipate into the thin air. Now, psychologists, psychiatrists, science would call this hypnagogic hallucinations. In other words, as your brain is kind of coming back online, is becoming awake, some people with sleep disorders would have these hallucinations that could be auditory or visual that go away once you kind of cognitively boot back up, right? But the thing about this is you go forward years in my life, and now I'm doing readings for people, bringing through their grandmother and grandfather, bringing through their best friend, their brother, and I'm telling them all these things just in the same vibe that I could see the black formless thing floating away. Well, in that same kind of non-reality, just your imagination hallucination way, I'm now saying like, oh, well, your cousin Ginny, she's really appreciative that you took over that rose bush. How the hell would I know that, right? So looking backwards, were those just hallucinations? Because what the readings are all not real? Look, where's the line drawn of what is real and what's just in your mind, you know?
I remember you telling my one friend whose mother had just passed that you saw yellow flowers all over and she was somewhere better, you know, and that's what her favorite flower was, a yellow rose. And my last reading, when I asked about my dad, you said, you know, he knew where he was going, and you know, his buddies were there, his wife was there, everybody, you know, it was great. I think I said something like, you know, he was my favorite person, and I just want to let him know. And he said, oh, that means the world to me. That's definitely something he would say. And you actually sound like the people too sometimes. And he said, but don't worry, throw out the vacuum. And you were like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that means. The vacuum was something that we always fought about, because like it would jam and he would take it apart. I'm like, just get another one. You know, this is crazy. I'm sick of doing this thing. So now he's been gone for, 4 years, and I've been doing it. I was just up there like a couple weeks before, and of course the freaking vacuum's all jammed. So I took it all apart and got it together. That's why I know it was him. That was his sense of humor. Everybody that I told cracked up about that. They were like, oh, that's really funny.
I remember when my mom first had a reading with you, it was a phone reading. My sister and I had mashed potatoes that day for breakfast. And like, who has mashed potatoes for breakfast aside from me and my weirdo sister? And you're like, did the girls have mashed potatoes for breakfast? And she was like, what the heck? And she's like looking around, there's like cameras somewhere. Like, how would you know that?
I don't remember too many nights where it didn't happen. As a matter of fact, it would often happen within the first hour of going to sleep. I don't know if that's when the natural REM sleep cycle would begin for me, but within that first hour, I'm already waking up screaming. And it would happen so much, like my dad would come running down the hall to like check on me, open up the door, and I'd be like breathing heavy. Oh, sorry, I was having a nightmare. It's okay, And there were times where I was so freaking tired. I was so exhausted from not sleeping the night before that I would go to sleep and the nightmare creature would be trying to get me, and I could feel it like draining me and getting into my body, and I couldn't wake up, and it's like sleep paralysis, and I would be moaning like this horrific, gut-wrenching, and my dad would come barreling in, and I would dart awake like, and he's like, what the hell is going on with you? So, he knew something was wrong. And, we ended up talking to my Aunt Madge, and she said to visually surround yourself with white light, See, this is the thing. Instead of coming at it from like a point of view, like Scotty's having nightmares and maybe he should go get to a counselor, and all this depression and suicidal, it's like, well, no, that house is crazy haunted, and now you're having things attack you. And I would say, like, look, I saw the blobby form moving away from me as soon as I woke up. So my Aunt Madge is like, imagine yourself in a halo of white light, and that's a trick that you can do for protection. And you can also, she said, somebody told me once, you can also do, imagine yourself in a halo of rainbow colors, and that will bring you friends. And they'll spirit guides, real people, helpers. So I used to try to do this, and in my visual imagination before going to sleep, I would try to imagine myself surrounded by white light. And I don't think it worked, I'd still wake up screaming. So it's like, all right, Do I imagine like a visual image in my head, like behind my forehead, imagine an image of myself, and then surround that image with white light? Is that the trick? Or do I imagine that there is a white light around my whole body in real life, like my body? And like I would just go flip-flopping in my head, like, what's the right way? What's the right way? It's not working.
When I was really, really little, I would have like night terrors, and I still remember a lot of them. And I had a dream that somebody came to me and taught me how to wake up when I would have a bad dream. Kind of like lucid dreaming, where like you're aware that you have a dream, but I would be able to wake myself up. And to this day, like if I'm having a bad dream or I'm not liking the way that a dream's going, I'll just wake up. Like I can just make myself wake up. I have a deep, like rooted terror of snakes. Like I hate snakes. And I used to have that before I had that one dream. Where I would wake up and, like, I would still see things. Like, I would actually see snakes, like, in my bed, and, like, I wouldn't be able to get up, and that's why I'm, like, terrified of snakes now. And, like, I would see them slither around and be on me, and it would scare the crap out of me, and then eventually I would finally wake up. But, like, I remember being awake, so it was kind of, like, hallucinating, but I was still dreaming. And, ever since, like I said, like, I learned how to wake up from, like, that, I guess you would say, like, that visitation just never happened again.
So the thing with these night terrors, these nightmares occurring so frequently, is that I became more and more sensitive to any change in the room, man. I mean, the barometer could change and I would wake up. There could be like airflow, I would wake up. Anything moves or any subtle change. I became so hypersensitive to this because I couldn't let, I don't know, the spirit possess me, the thing get me, because that was the goal. The whole thing was always coming to get me. It was always trying to get inside of my body. I could feel that was the intention. It was to like influence me, to get in me, and it used to freak me out. So I just became so sensitive to it. My dad used to come and check in on me. Like it would be later in the night when he'd go to sleep, and he'd very quietly try to turn the doorknob and open the door, and I would wake right up. From laying down all the way to sleep to bolt upright, sitting in the bed, looking at the door in sheer terror. And he's like, sorry, I was just trying to check on you. And I'm like, what the hell? What? Like so confused and disoriented. You know, when you don't sleep that soundly, you end up really being in a foggy headspace most of your life, you know. The dark circles under my eyes, the constant tiredness. I was tested once for iron deficiency, mono, thyroid disease. You know, you're not supposed to be that tired all the time. It's like, well, you know, I'm like having these crazy experiences every night.
I'm always been like a weirdo and stuff, and like never felt like I fit in, and like I feel like I had like past lives on like other planets, which sounds kind of like weird, but like I totally believe in that kind of stuff. And when we did the classes, like, I feel like it, like, really opened me up more, and it, like, he taught me, like, how to ground myself, and, like, I really like those. I really liked the meditation that we did with the Akashic Records. That was really, really cool. We did another meditation where, like, we were, like, walking down, like, the path, and, like, you would go down, like, the colors of the chakra, and, like, you would smell different things, and then you would have, like, I don't know, I guess you'd call it, like, your mind palace or whatever, and that was, like, your meditation space. That was really cool. I still like to do that one.
So what would you do, you know, if that happened to you, right? You're like 14, 15 years old. What do? You're not getting any good night's sleep. So you start praying, you know, like I didn't know any better, like raised Catholic. And by this point, you know, every day at school with religion class, they're teaching you these things in the Bible. You're going to mass. My whole kind of universal theory is that there's a God and there's a devil and there's angels and there's demons and there's a hell, you know. So I had to fit my experiences into that kind of spiritual worldview. That's the limited thing that I knew. So it must be demons. It must be the devil, right? It's coming for me. I always joke about this. You know what else happens around the age of 13 for a boy? Yeah. Well, you're going to hell for that one, kid. You know, look, the Catholic view of sex and masturbation is not the best view. You know what I'm saying? A lot of guilt and shame there. So it's all wrapped up into my 14-year-old brain that somehow Jesus knows this, and that's why the demons are coming. That's why the devil is like, I'm going to hell, you know? So I would pray with all my might every night before going to sleep. Before my grandmother passed, she would have me say my prayers every night. And it was kind of a habit. That's how you would kneel beside the bed, and you'd make the sign of the cross, and you would say an Our Father, and you would say an act of contrition, which itself is a little bizarre of a prayer for like a kid to say. Oh my God, I am sorry for my sins. In choosing to do wrong and failing to do good, I have sinned against you and your church. Let's repeat that at 10 and 11 years old. Let's brainwash the kid to believe that he's a piece of shit. What a great thing. Anyway, needless to say, without a rope to grab onto before I go to sleep at night, I would pray these things. I would pray the Our Father, so heartfelt and sincere. And if I felt that somebody was listening, if I felt like there was somebody on the other end of that telephone line, then right after I'm done the Our Fathers or the Hail Marys or the Glory Bees, I would add this little, and if you were listening and you're out there, could you just let me sleep through the night? Please be with me. Send me your angels. Protect me in my bed, in this bedroom. Do not let anything get at me tonight. Please. And then hours later, wake up with the screaming, the nightmares, the visions, the hallucinations again. Repeat, rinse and repeat, like washing your hair. Rinse and repeat. Go through the whole next day, tired, come home. I would get a nap. I remember napping after school sometimes, and that would be like some decent sound sleep for 2 hours, It was like light out. You know what's crazy about the darkness for me? It's not that I'm afraid of the dark. It's that when I wake up and it's dark, it's harder for me to see the forms in the room as not shifting. Like the forms all play tricks on me. I guess that's that hallucination thing. Or is it that our physical reality is kind of an imagination anyway? It's a thin veil between the worlds, and those in spirit can manipulate things, and I can start to see things. Well, look, if I woke up and there's light in the room, then I can clearly see that that's the bathrobe hanging from the back of the door. And over there, it's the closet doors open a little bit. Okay, I can see that, and I can kind of get back to real reality, wake myself up, breathe a little bit, and then go back to sleep. But when you wake up from a nightmare and it's like dark and you're seeing like there's this thing on the back of the door and it's shifting and it's got arms and it's like, is that real? Is that real? What is that? What is that? And it's like freaking you out for minutes until you realize it's the bathrobe. Like, dang it. So it's helpful for me to have a little bit of a light on when I go to sleep, only because when I do half wake up, my brain can half go back to sleep pretty quickly.
When my grandfather comes through, you always describe him as an old world, Italian, very well dressed, and always interested in what I'm doing in business. That's my grandfather, spot on. He would never come downstairs unless he was completely dressed with his hair kind of, in the 1950s slicked back. And he was a businessman, so that's all he talked about. As for, my grandmother's sister came through this time, and you described her perfectly. She was into fashion, and she was, a big personality and friendly, and she commented on my love of fashion and how we would connect on that, even though we were generations apart. And that was so her. I had just been looking at her photos not 2 days before our reading. Another one, my uncle, my grandmother's brother, every time he comes through in a reading, you tell me he's whistling or they're singing or there's some sort of music. My uncle used to love to sing in Miami. Everyone knew him as the guy that was down at the bar singing a cappella. And of course, my mother is always tasking me with, get on it. You're selling yourself short. But she always has a certain, she's, like I said, that tone of voice. And when you are about to deliver a message from her, that's how your voice is. It's like very, you need to pay attention. And it's like the inflection of the voice. It's like, I know who that is. The descriptions of these people are spot on.
So I would try again every night to pray. I'd pray in different ways. Let me try this thing. Let me try that thing. It got to the point where I was so desperate. Like, if it didn't work, it's probably my fault. It's probably because I didn't pray the right way. He didn't hear me. God didn't hear me. The angels didn't hear me. So I got to pray harder. I mean, that's kind of ingrained into you in Catholic school too, right? The way that you pray. You have to be sincere. You have to pray harder. So I actually had my grandmother's rosary beads. And it's like a prayer necklace for anybody who's not familiar with it. You start off with holding the little crucifix there, and that's the Our Father. And then there's 3 more beads. It's like the Hail Mary, followed by another Our Father, followed by 10 Hail Marys, followed by another 10 Hail Marys, all the way around. I mean, this is a long prayer bead, right? Rosaries are like, I don't know how long. It takes you 40 minutes to get through the whole thing, I guess. I don't know, maybe less, but I remember being exhausted in bed. It's a school night, and I'll be praying the rosary, And the whole thing was, the intention is to let me get through this night, protect me from the evil. And if I pray this whole rosary, Mother Mary will protect me. She'll do it. She's compassionate. She'll hear me. The problem is, after the 3rd or 4th decade of Hail Marys, I would start to get a little drifting. Was that 4 or 5? Wait, which one am I on? And I'd half fall asleep. Well, you have to start over again, right? Because you can't just pick up. What if you screwed up? Then you didn't do the rosary the right way. They won't hear the prayer. So I would start over from the beginning again, just to make sure I said the whole prayer the right way. This is how terrified that I was and how desperately in need of help that I was. Yeah.
I mean, I remember distinctly because it was so impactful and such a shock with the things that you said. First of all, you came here and really weren't meant to come here. We're meant to go to a friend of mine's house, and I was invited, and then there was an issue with her house being, it was a brand new house that was like really open. So she had contacted me and said, "Hey, do you mind if Scott comes to your house?" So I said, no, not at all. But I had never had a medium come here before. So I was a little nervous. I watch way too many horror movies. And so before you came, I actually went and smudged my den from top to bottom and talked to my guides, my people, and said, this is just, don't let anything negative enter. I just went around and did that. Okay, so what happened then, because I had been, unbeknownst to me, really strong spirits that were like putting their arms up like, no, this guy isn't going to say anything, and you needed to take control of that. And you did your thing. You took off your shoes, and, everybody's all nervous and keyed up, and you had a really tough time in the beginning, and you looked really puzzled, and you moved some people around, and I think you even stood up at one point, and then you said that there was someone of my spirits that was there protecting the space. And didn't know if you were there, with any negative spirits but exactly what I had smudged the room about. And, that you just wanted to reassure her that you weren't there to do any harm to anybody, and it was all positive. And then, so I thought, okay, that makes sense. But then you proceeded to talk about my spirit guide and actually blew me away. You said something that I had never told anybody. Two of them that were there that I never had said anything to anybody. One of them was I had a really powerful dream about the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet years before, and spelled a couple different ways, but it's Sekmet. And the reason I could figure it out, she was standing in front of me, and I don't follow anything Egyptian, so I don't know anything about anybody. She was standing in a field in front of me. I was behind her. Her back was to me, and she had her arms out to the side, and she laid waste to the whole field in front of her to protect me. Everything caught on fire. I have the chills now just talking about it. And she had a lion head or, something with a cat face. And it was colorful, like all the colors were there. So I didn't have any trouble finding her. Looking it up and, I looked at the first two and there she was. And she scared me because she was kind of like all wrath and protection, and man, I couldn't even like admit that I had dreamed her. So I had, looked her up and there it was because she hadn't given any name. You proceeded to describe her. Like I even now, I think I'm breaking out in a cold sweat. I was blown away. You talked about her as if you and I had sat down and I had sketched out a picture or showed you a picture of her and said that, she was from the time of Ra. And for some reason, she was attached to me and she was a really powerful spirit and you just had to let her know, that you weren't there to do me any harm. And so then she settled down. And I don't know how I heard anything after that because I was still, I'm sure my eyes were as big as saucers. But then there was someone else. There was another entity that was there. And that went back to when I first started meditating and I was doing a guided meditation and it was this little thing, like this little spiky ball of energy. So then you told me about that and you proceeded to describe that right down to the color that it was. There is no way in hell. There was nothing in the room that could have given you any clue about that. Nobody knew about that. You were able to get a handle on who it was and somehow you made her feel comfortable. Once you determined who those two were, then you were like, oh, okay. And that was when you explained about how you put like the white light, like you make it a circle and you explained that. And I think that initially you weren't able to do that because of them. But then once you talked to them, everybody got an amazing reading. Everybody was bawling. People were slapping one another. Oh yeah. Are you kidding? You were fine.
There's certain things that, I really try to avoid talking about. As a medium, I need to keep up a positive self-image. I need to put a positive image into the world, right? People are already skeptical enough about mediumship in general, and they're like, oh, are you going to tell me someone's going to die? Oh, what are you going to tell? They're afraid of me, So I'm like, look, I'm just a guy, I'm just normal. I'm here to help you. Let's keep a sunny disposition. So I don't want to talk about any of the freaky stuff because that would be it. People would be scared of me, or the people that wouldn't be scared of me would be some straight freaks. They'd be like, yeah, let's get the ghosts to come through. I'm going to draw a pentagram on the ground. No, thank you. So I avoid talking about this stuff. Furthermore, there are things that happened to me during these teen years that it would be hard for people to believe. I already know that. I got a pretty firm handle on it. Hearing the stories, people would think, well, obviously it didn't happen that way. He believes it did in his mind, but that's not real. That can't happen. But it happened to me, and I had to deal with it, and it was pretty goddamn real to me. So one of the things I'm thinking about is how, I would have these nightmares of these things trying to get into my body. And I would wake up and my whole left arm would be like pins and needles, tingling. Not because I was sleeping on my side, I'd be sleeping on my back, Sometimes it would just be my hand. There were times where I would wake up and I would be flicking my arm and my hand because it didn't feel like it belonged to me. It felt like the spirit was half possessed me already and it was trying to get the rest of my body, but it had already got my arm. And my soul was pushed out of half of my body as this other thing was pushing in. And it was the most bizarre, goosebumpy feeling. How do you protect yourself from that?
The first time you were here, like I said, I was so blown away by those things. I knew everybody else got a really good reading, but I didn't, I didn't know what to expect either. The second time you came, and I'm going to still get emotional about this. I was sitting right next to you and you asked, who Joe was and, a couple of things. So I was able to claim my dad. And he had been gone by then, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And he had arthritis really bad. So it was still new to me. It was only your second time here. so you started talking about him, and then I saw you change, and you reached out to me with your hand, and your hand was all crippled like my dad's hand was. I and you grabbed my hand and you said, like, with his hand, Scott, that you were, like, I had to stop giving my strength away to other people, that he was worried about me, but you were my father sitting there. And his knuckles were all deformed, plus he was in World War II and he had been shot down, so the tips of a couple of his fingers were crimped too, because there were like wires and things in there, and that's what your hand was like when you reached to me. I guess that's when I realized, and that's when I started really paying attention to other people's readings as you were doing them, that I could watch you change while you were reading for somebody. You're not just your facial expressions. Sometimes you seemed shorter, sometimes you were stouter, sometimes you were more feminine, and it just amazed me. But that, I will never ever forget you reaching to me as my dad.
And here's another thing that's crazy while we're on the topic of these nightmares. That summer when my grandmother passed away, I had just completed 1 full year of Catholic school at St. John's. And I was friends with people in the school, and one of them was Bill. He was a good friend of mine. Well, that summer, the principal, Sister Joanne, she had reached out to Bill and his family and said, I think you should give Scott Henry a call and see what he's up to. And he did, and we became friends that summer, and ride our bikes around. And I remember once Bill slept over, actually. And, it was a little bedroom. I had my little bed, and he slept down on the floor there next to the bedroom door. And he ended up that night having this dream where vampires were chasing him, and, they were going to, consume his soul. And he said it was the scariest, most terrifying dream he ever had. That's, sleeping in the bedroom that I slept in. There you go. How do you like that?
You really connected with a spirit, and then that spirit just kind of took over you. So you came one time, and I had a picture of my friend who passed in my pocket, him and his dog. He had an Alaskan Husky, and he adored that dog. And he would be loud and obnoxious, like that very gravelly voice, very, just very rough. So you were reading everybody the way you do, people kind of pop up and you'll say, is this for you or is this for you? And I'm getting this. And all of a sudden you were talking in that rough voice, and you were doing the thing that he always did with his dog. Like, he would always get his hand in there and say, oh, Axel, you're such a good dog. And you were doing exactly that. And you're like, does anybody here know? And of course, it took me a few minutes because I was sobbing.
One of the things I found that really helped me, I got into classic rock and everything at the time. And I got really heavy into Pink Floyd. And the thing about Pink Floyd lyrics and the music, kind of psychedelic rock, and the lyrics kind of end up being very abstract, sort of about mental illness and reality, and it goes into a deep kind of abstract vibe, My awareness was becoming less grounded in physical reality and more abstracted and imaginative. I was more interested in these large kind of abstract philosophical concepts, and I spent a lot of time in my head in those spaces, If I was experiencing desperate loneliness, emptiness, sadness, it was a tough time. So what ends up happening is you find music where they're expressing similar emotions, and all of a sudden you feel less alone, right? You connect with it, and then you want more of it. So you got Pink Floyd, The Wall. Oh man, when I was 13 and my grandmother passed and that album landed in my lap, I'll tell you what, that thing really struck a chord. I was obsessed with Pink Floyd's The Wall for probably 5 years. totally obsessed. I could do every single lyric in there. And, the walls are the walls that separate him from everybody. As a rock star, you're idolized. So it's like you're put away from everybody. But are also the walls that prevent you from connecting with other people, the walls that prevent you from being in touch with your own emotions. And finally, the wall that separates you from your loved ones in spirit, right? Like, what's on the other side? Is there anybody out there? This is the wall. So I would listen to this album nonstop. Did it make it worse? Gosh, looking back on it, yeah, maybe, the suicidal ideation runs through that record, man. There's like, goodbye, cruel world, I'm leaving you today. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Like, listen to that song a bunch of times, why don't you? Great idea, Oh my God. There's like bags under my eyes. I'm pale. I have no energy. I'm lethargic. I'm taking naps. I'm eating crappy microwave pizza, and I have no friends, and I'm just alone in my bedroom. Yeah, let's listen to that, The record ends with, let me think if I could think of this. It's like, oh yeah, here we go. It goes, all alone or in twos, the ones who really love you walk up and down outside the wall. Damn. That'll mess with your head. So, I don't know, man. I don't know if there was something subconsciously I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go find my grandmother. I wanted to go home, I wanted to go home. But it all comes down to the feeling like you're not home here on planet Earth. Well, no wonder I don't feel like I'm home here on planet Earth. Nobody was ever there for me in key developmental years. I mean, all right, woe is me. All right, see, this is an awkward thing for me to talk about, and I have conflicting emotions about it. But I learned from these years to be highly sensitive to things that are lower vibration. It doesn't have to get that close to me. I can feel it right away, and nope, I'm good. I know to block it before it even gets close because I've had so many years of experience having it get too close that now I can sense it the instant that it's going bad. We're done. We're closed. We're walking. It's done. So that's how that works.
When the readings are not going the way you want them to, you have that moment of doubt. As soon as you walk in the door, there's that look of discomfort that you get. I had a really close friend of mine staying with us, but he could not have been a more negative black hole of despair. He was staying in the room where we had the reading, and there was just nothing that would come. It just seemed like, you really tried. You moved people around, you put people upstairs, you really separated us, but you looked like you just wanted to leave. And other times when you walk in and you're comfortable, but your joints are loose and yeah, you're really comfortable.
Being raised Catholic, that's a whole nother nut to crack right there. The type of Catholic upbringing that I had, whenever you hear about people who are recovering Catholics, yeah, that fits me. Look, I don't want to stigmatize the entire thing. You may have had a different experience growing up where Christianity taught you a sense of community and compassion and philanthropy, a love of your neighbor. My brand of Christianity taught me that Satan was coming for my soul, that I am a sinner all the way deep down into my bones, that Jesus Christ can see me, can look into my soul, knows that I'm a sinner and I must repent. This is some fire and brimstone shit to be laying on a child, you know what I mean? So the Catholicism and that whole worldview, that didn't work out too well for me during the Depression years because those two things combine to form a cocktail that's not so healthy mentally. I'll say it that way,
One of the things was like this one friend who had passed that I had, you said, yeah, he didn't even know that he died. And I had thought that. I thought, there's no way, because it was an accident kind of, It wasn't like he was trying to kill himself, It became a problem, like they thought he, tried to kill himself and all this. And I knew he didn't. I just knew it. There's no way. And I was sure of it. And so but he didn't. And you said to tell his mother that it wasn't her fault. Another friend of mine had married somebody who was a widower, and his wife was super religious. And you said, oh, they're on a different level altogether. They have their own thing they're doing, where it's very religious and faith-based.
And one other thing on this whole concept of evil, when people, ask me about, is there a hell? I've never seen that duality exist on the other side. The other side seems to be all one. It's got oneness, it's got completion, it's satisfaction, it's totality. Here is the place of duality. So, do demons exist? Does evil exist? I kind of have this idea that the way we think about angels is that they're the other side of a coin, whereas in reality, angels are just a very enlightened being on the other side, a version of the oneness that is more powerful. There's no other side of an angel, right? If you believe that, belief makes it real, and in this physical reality, you can make demons real, you can make Satan real, you can make all that stuff very real. There's different ways to look at this. It's all a matter of your perception, right? Your own ego has desires. There are certain things that are pleasant in your life experience, and there's certain things that are unpleasant. And the unpleasant things tend to be seen as dark or bad or even evil. One could say that when it's a pleasant thing, you're feeling energized, you're feeling whole, you're feeling happy, and that's kind of equated with heaven and God and the angels and positivity. When something knocks you out of that, it's taking you away from heaven, away from God, away from positivity, and that's quote-unquote evil. When you try to see yourself as part of a huger collective, right? If we go to the other side and we're all one, we're all interconnected, then all of a sudden this whole idea of angels, demons, good and evil, it doesn't grip you the same way. Everything starts to look like it's all playing towards enlightenment. Even the worst hardships, the most unpleasant, dissatisfying, uncomfortable, painful struggles, all get you to evolve. That's another way of looking at it, right? So what story do you tell yourself? You got to go with the story that feels like your truth. You have to go with the version of the narrative of the religions of the world, the spiritual viewpoints of all these different cultures. Which one resonates with your truth? You have to go with what works for you. You have to really ask yourself about your truth in a way that you're courageous enough to face any things that you think are challenging to look at. Be comfortable with who you are. Feel good about the world in general. Breathe, relax, feel life going through you. Feel that you are an integrated and holistically well expression of the God force here in life. And as such, you're not really under threat. There's not really this eternal struggle towards damnation, this epic battle for your soul. You know what made all that real? I didn't connect with anybody, and I was kind of going out into my head into these grand spiritual notions of humanity and these epic kind of ethical religious fields of thinking influenced by this Catholic way of good and evil, and I had to fit everything into that worldview, and the power of my mind was making things extremely real. Now, the question is, do they exist outside of your mind? Will they exist if you stop believing in them? I don't know. They might, There might be some truth to it. If there are like lower astral spirits and they're out there and maybe they have bad intent, like, do I even want to focus on that? Like, I can't. I just cannot do that. I'm not built to do that. Maybe there is such a thing as evil. Maybe there are negative spirits out there. Maybe all that stuff is real. And, it's like just what you attune to. So it's like when I was having all the nightmares and the night terrors, I don't think it's just a projection of my depression or like there's some neurological condition that was creating these sleep disturbances, especially, like I said in episode 2, my cousins would go there and see spirits and have experiences and feel ghosts. So there is something there. I'm going to be in the reality where it's like there is no earthbound spirits, purgatory's not a thing, limbo's not a thing. You die, you go to heaven, and what a wonderful thing that God gives you this choice to take as long as you want to have a life review, take as long as you want to tie up loose ends, but we're all going into the light, I have to tell myself that story to protect myself at night, to register my brain towards a positive attitude. And that's really the only thing that I have control over anyway, right? So if I can control that and it has a positive impact on me and it has a positive impact on the experiences that I can give people who hire me to do readings, then that's what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? I guess it kind of starts to sound a little fuzzy, like it pushes the boundaries of even what I know. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a drop off about like all these years and all this knowledge I've gained. I don't know everything. I still don't know everything, You could talk to another medium who deals with these kind of lower astral things more expertly than I do, and they'll be able to elaborate so much more, give you all this extra input on exactly what's going on, with a haunted house or with, some ghost from the 1800s that's like, knocking on walls and stuff. Like, what is that? I don't know. I say, oh, that's just an echo. That's not real. Or you know what I mean? Like, how about that sleep disturbance? Oh, that's probably caused by my depression or something. I mean, it's there, but it's not, And so it's like I have to kind of believe in two contradictory realities at once. I like the reality where there is no evil. That's what I'm going with, But the truth is, maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's out there. It certainly would explain those years I was having those night terrors. And to this day, I'll hit a certain bump in a reading where maybe I push too hard, I open myself up too much, and it really affects me bad. Like I'll come out of there and it's like my eyes are black and I'm just tired looking, bags under my eyes. It's like, ooh, is Scott okay? Like, nah, I'm not, man. Nah, That's the night where I'm going to get like a cigar and a glass of whiskey and I'm going to go to sleep and hit reset, man. I'm going to hit the reset button, But that's why I'm so sensitive to this stuff, because I don't want to let it get that far, I still stumble and struggle occasionally even now, but that's the story I got to tell myself, if that makes any sense,
I just always found you to be such a kind of a balm for my soul. No matter how the reading goes, there's just that connection there, and you leave and I'm left with that feeling that like death isn't the end. It's just comforting feeling that your readings give.
The thing that finally got me out of those nightmares and the night terrors was when I found my way into meditation groups, spiritual guidance that was a little more new agey, a little more holistic, and started going towards this idea that our mind is the builder, our mind makes reality, that we have control, and that you can instead attune yourself to something positive. There are still to this day people who will get my number and they'll call me and they'll ask, I'm having some troubles. I have a spirit attachment. I know it's on me. I can feel it. I've been dealing with this all my life. There's a dark cloud over me. What do I do? And I'll tell them the same thing that I'm telling you right now. It's what I've learned. You can do these little tricks to clear your auric debris, to clear the energy in your space and your mind and your soul. All right? And they'll kind of work. It's a little Band-Aid. It's a little nudge in the right direction. What's those spiritual tricks? Burn sage in a room, right? Open some windows, turn on a fan, sleep differently with different blankets, turn the temperature of the room differently, move your bed around, move the furniture around, paint the walls a different color. These are all little tricks that can shift your attitude and your vibration just enough to make you feel better. But guess what I think the most powerful weapon against this stuff is? Enthusiasm in your life. And I don't mean mentally, I mean right here in this physical world. You know what the best weapon is? Whatever makes you happy, find it and do it. I don't care if it's little. You're like, I like gardening. Go out and garden. But it could be anything, right? Do you like a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese? I don't think it's going to make you feel better. But if that makes you feel better, then you deserve it. Go out and get it. Go out and get your caramel macchiato. Go out and treat yourself to a nice haircut. Go get some nice clothes. Do something that makes you feel good. That you got to start small. If you can start small, then you can build up to something bigger. Something bigger. Now all of a sudden you can spend more hours towards this goal that you're passionate about. Now all of a sudden where you weren't passionate about anything, now you're starting to get ideas. Now you're starting to break through. Once you become engaged in projects in the real world that actually consume your mind and your focus, there is no more room in your head for the evil dark cloud thing to take root. You can only focus on so many things at once. There's not enough room in your head for too many things, okay? If your mind is full with something that you're engaged and enthusiastic about in reality, in the physical world, then there's not a lot of room in there to be stewing about the dark cloud and the spirit attachment and the troubled nightmares. Because you know what I did during my teen years? I was praying to make them go away. What that really was doing was coming from a place of fear. The thing in my subconscious was, I'm terrified. Somebody, please help me with this. I'm adding fear into it. So just by talking like you have a spirit attachment, you have dark things in your bedroom, just by mentioning it, you're making it more real. You have to jump realities, right? Like a Jedi Knight, like Luke Skywalker. You've got to be a master of the Force. You have to jump into another reality of belief, where that reality is, I'm engaged in something in the real world that's making me really happy. The bad stuff slips away. There's not enough molecules in the air to charge them in a negative way. It just goes away. You reprogram your reality by doing that. The problem is when you're really in a funk, when you're really in a tough spot, you're going to do the yeah buts. Because I did. I'll say, well, if you're having a tough time, why don't you go get yourself a coffee or go shopping or do the thing that makes you happy? Well, I can't do that because I got to be home by this time. Well, I can't do that because I don't have enough money for the gas in my car. But there's going to be something that says, yeah, but, because you can get addicted to that negative place. I know, because I was. And that's really hard to break. If somebody went back to my 14-year-old self and said, hey, you're going to be better if you just go out and do this thing, I'd be like, clearly, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand me at all. And now I just feel more alone because you don't understand me. Because clearly that's not going to work. That's the headspace you're in. But let me tell you, if you can just bump it out with the smallest little thing, you got to start small. Whatever it is that will make you break that cycle in your head of that loneliness, depression, dark cloud, spirit attachment, evil in my house, whatever. Start small, build from there, and it will go away. That is the most powerful weapon against this stuff. For me, it was meeting the right woman. It was getting in a loving relationship. It was working out my career. It was feeling better about myself. It was, stop talking to certain people in my family that are very negative and toxic. It's all these kinds of things that build me back into a feeling like, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe being alive is pretty good after all. Maybe I do have a mission, and it's not about doing anything. It's just about being myself. It's just about being myself because I'm a good person, because I care, because I'm thoughtful, I'm sensitive, I'm considerate, and that's not so bad. And it took a long time to get here, but now that I'm here, I look back on those times and I think, man, it'd be nice if somebody was there to help me through that, right? What a pity party those years were. But everything serves a purpose. There's a reason for everything. It worked to get me to where I needed to be in my life. It attuned me to more positive things. So join me in the next episode. I finally start to figure stuff out. Meditation and mantras, going higher, spirit guides and guardian angels. I'm planning on putting up a new episode once a week, probably on Mondays, so check it out. Monday morning, it should be up there. Every new episode will be listed on the podcast website at rippleroadpod.com. That's rippleroadpod.com. Or check out my own personal website. It's scottedwardhenry.com. And that's Scott with one T. Thanks again for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Woohoo! We made it. We're through it. We don't have to go through that again. Whew!